Welcome to Soulful Practices podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Holling-brooks, and over the past 20 years, I have been on a journey of healing and awakening. I'm also a coach and practitioner for clients on their journey of unbridling their true self. The number one question I'm asked is, what meditation or practice will help me reach my goals? While there is no one meditation or secret mantra that will unlock our own awakening, there is a doorway that will lead us there. And that's the doorway of learning and cultivating the skills of self-reflection and contemplation. Each episode of this podcast offers you pocket teachings and practices that you can implement right away to help you courageously connect with living your authentic soul-led life. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of Soulful Practices. I'm your host, Michelle Holling-brooks, and we are currently in season 2 of Soulful Practices. And this season, the main theme that we are working on is cultivating the ability to access and connect and choose to move the way love helps us move, to move with more love, compassion, and curiosity, and all the different aspects of our life. And so I knew that I couldn't quite dive into this one without directly talking about emotions. I have talked about emotions pretty much in every episode, but I haven't had a chance to just really pare down and dive directly into how do we partner with emotions within our system, especially really, truly, it's all types of emotions because we have protectors that block us from connecting in with love, with joy, with happiness, with excitement, with all these different childlike wonder and awe and bliss. And maybe I'll do a piece about that one. But this one was really, how do we work with the quote unquote negative emotions, right? How do we work with those emotions that bubble up within us that many of us deem, especially in different spiritual worlds, we deem them as lower level. And then even in the mental health and wellness, we'll say, oh, well, those are negative emotions. They're tanking your system. They're dropping your endorphins. They're putting you into adrenal fatigue. And we have really bad stigmas with these things called emotions. Now, side note, I'm a mom, as some of you guys know, and so I also, though, totally recommend the movies from Disney, Inside Out 1 and 2, to all of my clients because I think they're such huge doorways of seeing emotions differently. And I was so excited when those came out. We've used those with clients through over the years since those things came out, especially actually surprisingly, not only with the teenage clients that we work with out on the mental health side, but a lot of the veterans and first responders and adults that we work with to helping reconnect to hey, there's a different way to work with emotions. So that's just a side note and a part to this episode. If you haven't seen those, I would really recommend them. But the pocket teacher that I have for this one is not those. It comes from a teacher that I've introduced to you in season 1, which is Pema Chödrön. And Pema Chödrön is a beautiful soul. She is an American Buddhist monk. She is a teacher not only in the Buddhist practices and teachings, but I kind of bring her more into the generality of just personal growth and freedom and empowerment. I really think her teachings speak to that. I just love her body of work so much. I love the messages that she brings forward in it. And it's really hard to kind of pick then which ones we are kind of going to work with in this idea because so much of her work brings into that. That being said, I did pick one, and this quote is one that I heard from a talk that she was doing, and I had to pause it and back up and kind of listen to it again and again. And she was quoted in there as I captured it saying, rather than letting our negativity get the better of us, and it has a bad word in here, so just, bleep it as you want, we could acknowledge that right now we feel like a piece of dookie or a piece of, and not be squeamish about acknowledging that. And instead, taking a good look. So again, she invites us into saying, hey, rather than letting the negativity get the better of us, meaning it's going to come out sideways somehow, some way. Even if we try to push it upside, that we feel like a piece of donkey right now and we don't really want to look at it, we don't want to acknowledge it. We have belief systems that somehow tell us if I'm a good spiritual person or if I'm a mentally healthy person, I shouldn't be feeling those ways. That if we allow that to happen, we're allowing that negativity to quote unquote get the better of us, meaning it's going to come out sideways. That energy has got to go somewhere because, as we'll discover throughout the rest of this episode, there's a reason it's there. There's a piece of us that right now says, I feel like crap, you know? And her invitation is very interesting in her word choices. She says to not be squeamish about taking a good look at what that is. So, in case those of you who didn't listen to episode 6, I believe it was when I first introduced her, in that episode 6, it was really about coming into the present moment and being with what is. That was what we were focusing on in season 1, of a willingness to kind of like step out of not engaging with what is there present within us. And she says that as we turn to engage with the fear or truth of what is there, we're going to be met by these emotions that we don't know what to do with. We're going to be met by things like fear. We're going to be met by things like uneasiness and hurt feelings. Like something's going to meet us in that space when we slow down and agree to be present with what is. And that is because there are parts of us that feel quote unquote negativities. This is what I love about her work is she debunks the whole entire idea that somehow in a meditation practice it's only supposed to be bliss and wonder and awe and union and oneness and happiness and feelings of euphoria. She's like, actually, that is not what meditation is about at all. And she was the first person I heard that said this. Before this point, I had been steadily marching down a road that believed that somehow through these meditation practices, I should be shedding all of these lower level emotions. I should no longer have moments of feeling anger or upset or rage. I should no longer have moments of feeling disappointed or worried or fearful or anxious. Like somehow as I learned and I healed and I mastered myself more, that word mastery, we've done a dance with that. That as I would do that, somehow all these other emotions of sadness, of anger, disappointment, confusion, feeling dysregulated inside myself, feeling an uneasiness or an antsiness, feelings of tiredness or slowness and sluggishness that's not related to like a true energy level, but like a weariness of the mind and of the heart, that somehow those would not be a part of me. And when I was marching down that road, it was really truly a very pretty dressed up road of separateness. It was separating me, compartmentalizing, and trying to take me out into dualistic thinking of I can be all of this and yet none of this will be a part of me. That's not holism, right? These energies are a part of a whole. And so if we instead, can we then get curious? What she says is when you sit, everything that comes to meet you as you're sitting are the things that you will have pushed aside. So sitting is something it takes great courage to sit, because when we sit, what we will have been avoiding, pushing to the side, numbing out, not hearing, la la la, see no evil, speak no evil, not connecting to because we're in the busyness of our day, that is going to come to us. So however that sitting comes forward to us, whether that's a walking meditation, whether that's coloring, whether that's treating ourselves to a mindful bath or doing a true quote unquote meditation of allowing our body to come into a place of stillness, a place of silence, and meeting that and saying, what is here? We can begin to notice those things. And we're not designed to make them just float away and detach ourselves from them. Actually, she challenges that meditation is the exact opposite. That's kind of a westernized version of what we've done to this thing. And instead, it's really designed to compassionately turn us towards it. So if we're going to turn towards it, then that means that there's a reason as to why it's there. And what I realized is that as I was marching myself down this road of self mastery, of mastering my emotions and my mindset mastery, and all these other things that put basically dressed up versions of trying to control everything that was happening inside and around me, the more and more I was engaging in those techniques, the more and more dysregulated I was becoming. The more and more pressure I could feel building up in my system, the more and more disorganized the rhythms of my bodies became, like moments of it just bleeding through and like making me feel completely detached to like this huge tug of war that was happening to me. And I was like, look, this is not working. This is making everything worse within me than what. And that's when I found and I stumbled across her teachings. And I realized that the plastering of the no worries, no smile on my face was just trying to convince myself that all of those quote emotions had no connection to me, therefore had no power over me. So what was really happening is I felt very powerless. I felt like I was at the whim of these quote unquote what I deemed lower level emotions because I didn't like them. I didn't understand them. I didn't know how to work with them. I didn't have a bandwidth for them. And they were just really running amok behind me and I didn't know how to work with them in a healthy way. So I just was saying, okay, the healthy way is that I will not have them because they're a result of something lower within me than who I truly am. Not the healthiest way. I always send so much love to those earlier parts of me in that journey. And at the same time, I don't regret any ones of those moments. I used to be like, oh, I wish I could go back and like delete that and take that out. And then I finally, one day I was sitting in a meditation and I realized that each and every one of those stages that I walked through with either my emotions, my thoughts, the different wounded parts of myself, each of those stages did add a real ability for me to begin to look at what I was up to, right? That stage of saying, I am not my emotions, they don't control me, was absolutely necessary because it was the first time I decided that, wow, I didn't have to be on the ride of my emotions. I didn't have to be taken into the depths of despair or into the complete euphoria, like without any grounding, like this big, huge pendulum that just is swinging all over the place. And I don't feel that I'm in the driver's seat. So this first part of my journey of being able to separate, like, I am not my emotions and they are not me. I am not my thoughts and they are not me. That was huge. I needed that. It was how I was able to start to say, wow, I could have an observer self, right? I could see that a part of me is really pissed off right now. I can see a part of me feels like crap right now. I can see a part of me feels incredibly hurt right now, or scared, or worried. I could see a separation. So I wasn't blended with them anymore. Now, the problem is what I did with being able to see them as separate as me. Instead of being able to be curious and ask, hey, what is that about? I just deemed that that person of that part of me should not be feeling that way. I was losing power to it. Therefore, I was going to cap that off and shove that emotion on out there. Just breathe it out. Do a little nervous system reset hack and bring in my breathing techniques, bring in my witnessing techniques, bring in my mindfulness techniques, bring in all of these different very well-established techniques to reorganize my nervous system. But what I was never doing was turning towards it, taking a good look, getting curious. What is it there for? Why is it there? What is it up to? And this word squeamish that came in from Pema really caught me because I realized like that was actually it. My system didn't feel strong enough. In whatever reason or capacity, it didn't feel like it had enough skill, it didn't have enough capacity, it didn't have enough bandwidth, like whatever it was really nervous that it could actually turn towards that and take a good look without losing balance. And so that became like step one, like, how do I do that? What is that up to? What is that there? And so all of a sudden, these parts of me It's not about trying to make them go away. It's not trying to turn them off with a breath technique or just watching them turn into waves. It's a whole bunch of different things that I needed to work with. So the big question becomes, where do we go from there? Once we realize that that step one is so important of being able to unblend ourselves from feeling that emotion as me and owning it. I am dot dot dot. Anything you put beyond on the other side of I am is becomes real to your system. So when we say I am mad, I am angry, I am tired, we claim that as ours and our system bolsters around it and says, ooh, that's what we are? Okay, right? And instead, being able to separate that out in a healthy way and say, a part of me is, or a piece of me is, or a huge part of me feels this way right now, that allowed me to get a little separation, right? That allows us to see and start to look at something as not as us, and therefore we're not as enmeshed, we're not as ensnared and entangled and interwoven with it. We actually have that perspective to look at it and be like, oh, hey, let me turn this around. Let me like look this up and look this down and see where it wants to go from there. And so that's the next step. Like, right? What happens? What are these emotions here for? Why are they here? What are they up to? What is happening when I just shove them out? And what I first started noticing is I was like, well, where do they go? If I don't engage them, what happens to them? And I was like, oh, well, they go into my hip. They go into my right shoulder. They go into my big toe. They go into my shin. They go into my head. They go into different organs within me. They go into blockages and kinks and get bottleneck. Almost like the image I always see is like this poor little desk of this person. It's from a movie. And those of you who know what movie I'm talking about, you'll realize it. And so like this person's like office is all backlogged with like papers all the way up to here, and like there's this tube that just keeps bringing more messages, more messages, more messages, more information, more orders that need to be filled, more things that people need or want. So it's the papers don't represent anything themselves. They don't have a good or a bad thing to them. They're just pieces of paper that are what? They're orders. They're information. They're, hey, a part of this person over here needs this, this, and this. This person over here needs this, this, and this. This thing. They are attached to parts of us that need something, right? And there we are sitting in our little office going, I'm not touching any of you. And so what happens? It backlogs. It creates huge stacks of like kinks in the hose and dams within us that eventually, at some point, break free, right? And what Pema is inviting us into, as I felt in this, is really recognizing that if we just let our negative emotions pile up, if we aren't willing to just turn to that and say, hey, a part of me is pissed right now, and then being willing to take a good look at what is that about. If we don't do that, those negative emotions within us don't just float out of us, they get lodged in us. And pretty soon they're going to come out some way. They're going to come out in a way that is not helpful at all. And what I like to call sideways. So it's going to erupt in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And those eruptions in the mental health world are what we call trauma responses, meaning somebody walks along and they ping us just a little bit in just the right way. And all of a sudden, this whole avalanche of backlog of energy that is the emotions comes bushing through, and wham, we are in a full-blown trauma response. We are overreacting to what the stimulus is in our environment. It is way out of balance and it gets the better of us, right? So what's the alternative? The alternative is for us to then work with that which we are seeing. Okay, so we can say a part of me feels really pretty darn pissed off right now, or part of me feels really tired and just weary and like just giving up right now. I can own that. That's step one. I can see that that's not just me, it's a part of me, right? I've separated myself out. Now part two is saying, what is the heck is that emotion up to? It's a messenger. It's talking to some other part of our system. I like to view emotions as like the Hermes of, or you could call it the Mercury, depending on which set of either Roman or Greek gods you want to talk to. You know, it's that idea that that's that messenger for the gods in the different parts of us. You know, it is the ability for the kidney to be able to say this, for our mental being to be able to say that, for our heart to say this. It helps us know what we want to move more towards and engage with. Those are those feel-good emotions, right? Like, oh my gosh, that lights me up. That like gets me excited. I'm curious. I want to know more about that. We want to move towards that. That emotion is a messenger for that part of us that wants us to move into engaging with it. Vice versa, ones of apprehension, ones of pause, ones of dreads, ones of whatever. Those are emotions that are trying to back us off. We don't want to engage with that for whatever reason. We don't feel that we want to experience more of that. They basically are designed to just give us information that, hey, there's a need within our system. There's something that needs, has a question, concern, or confusion, and it wants to be tended to, right? They help us gain our intention too of the things that want our attention in a positive way, like the ideas and inspiration and the dreams that take us out of the status quo of the system and start to think, well, what if this could be different? And what if I could experience something new in here? And they really help to gain our attention into those different ways of the things that want to be born through us. So those are the messengers that are coming from our heart and our soul, calling us to really honor and to work with something. And then there's the messages of like loss, of feelings of sadness, feelings that something is not okay, that something wants to be honored, to be seen, to be felt, to be tended to. That also is a message from our heart and our soul, asking us to turn towards the parts of us that are in need, right? So the tricky part then starts to come in like, well, how do we really start to connect with the emotions that we are in and use them as a link to be able to then talk to the part of us that is needing that support, that's deeper in those emotions. Two images that can kind of maybe help you out here. One of them is like the top of a water during like a storm. You know, there's the wind, there's the waves, and they're clashing, and the different waves are moving in the different things. That's like trying to connect with just the motions by themselves, right? Like it's jostling, it's all over the place. We're on the surface trying to ask that emotion what it's up to. Wave, why are you doing what the wave is doing? Well, the reason why that wave is doing what it's doing has nothing to do with the surface and has everything to do with what's happening below the surface. So if we can sink in, one, we get out of the jostling of the upper part of that feeling of just the intensity that can happen up there. And we can sink a little bit lower into some of the calmness, into some of the stillness, excuse me, into being able to actually dialogue with the parts of us that are below the surface, guiding what's happening up there in that storm, right? And we can connect with them one-on-one without as much interference as what's happening on top of that water. So we don't want to sit on the surface of these things. We don't want to just feel like we're trying to tell the winds to calm down, because that's not the source. That's the response, right? And so we want to go a little bit deeper into allowing ourselves to speak with what is below that wave. If we stop riding that wave and we sink in a little bit and we start to say, what else is here? Who else is here? And we can zoom out a little bit, then we can begin to notice what are the things that are creating that. And so one of the main ways in which I have every single one of the practices that I share in Soulful Practices, it is designed on this beautiful, compassionate inquiry of allowing ourselves to turn towards that which is and say, hey, what is happening below the surface of that? Let me feel what is happening in and around my body with that emotion, so I can figure out where it got shoved when I wasn't able to work with it in the moment, right? And I can be like, okay, I see you. I see you in my high heart center. It feels clenched. It feels nervous. Maybe there's a tightening of my throat. And then I just ask it, share more with me. Tell me more. Bring in that love, that compassion, and that curiosity. That's why it's sitting in this season, right? And asking it to, if it had a little thought bubble above its head, what would it be saying? What is its image? If it might not have a voice, because it might be too young of a part of me that's pre-verbal, right? Or have you ever been in such an overload of fear or anxiety or loss and grief energy that there are no words? Somebody tries to engage you through words and there's literally nothing there, right? So this thought bubble has the ability to bring in colors, images, pictures, moments in time, like little videos of a flash of what it's holding, right? And it gives you a little bit more insight into what is happening within this part of you. And what I like about this imagery of what do I feel in and around my body, and then asking it to come out of that part of your body. So, like, I can still talk to it in my shoulder. That works because sometimes it doesn't want to come out of my shoulder or out of somewhere other part. But if I can invite it to come a little bit in front, maybe it doesn't feel comfortable coming totally in front of me. Maybe it wants to come a little to the side. It wants me to come up next to it and sit down. And then it can have that little thought bubble and it can just show me. Give me those images. Let me hear those tones. If there are words in there, let me hear the words. Share with me. What are you holding within inside of you? What is there and present? And it brings me back to this part of her quote that says to not be squeamish, to take a good look. We don't want to move fast here. Again, we don't want to pop back up to the surface because we'll end up back in the jostling. We want to bring a beautiful calm energy that allows it to say, hey, I am here. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm not trying to change you. I want to understand. We're seeking the soul medicine of understanding. And understanding is not fixing, right? And so that's like also like a sub step of this process is we've got to let that go. So this way we're not bypassing an emotion. We're not trying to teach it what it should or shouldn't be feeling. We're simply encouraging it. Share with me what is held within you. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your fears? What do you need support with? And we're asking it to guide us as to what it needs that has the help within it. So there's a teaching in the shamanic cultures almost all around the world that work with this is like that the medicine is within the wound. And I love that teaching because it's brilliant. One, it says that the medicine doesn't come from outside of ourselves. The perfect, absolute antidote that's going to help whatever that wound is, however we want to describe it, heal, unwind itself, find the closure that it needs to bring itself back together, to soften, to be strong and whole again, right? To take that fractured, fragmented self and bring that back into that sense of wholeness, of it, remembering that that's there. That medicine of what that particular wound needs is within it. So if I come to it from the outside with my happy-go-lucky toolbox of breathing techniques, of movement techniques, of, this, that, and the other, and points, and yada, 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 all the things that are in my beautiful healing techniques. I got a tone for that, a bowl for that, I got a thing for that. I always kind of see it as this little part that's like got this little trench coat on and it's coming in and it's like, I got a healer for that. It's like we want to say, no, wait. The healing actually is within that wound. And so my ability to turn towards it, to not be squeamish, to take a good look is an invitation for that which I am observing to inform me, to guide me. And can I stay and ride that wave with it in a way that helps guide it? And also, yes, sometimes it's really stuck in a belief system. These parts of us that are frozen in time, like little tic tacs all over the place, they're frozen in that point of view. So I can't bring my older self's logic to that little point. It doesn't know that. So I need to bring the logic that's going to work and make sense of that. Sweetie, honey, this isn't your fault. Come here. Sweetie, honey, we can fix this. We can work on this. We can help you feel better. Come on over. Let's tend to this first, and then we'll worry about what we need to do next, right? Like allowing ourselves to not bypass that moment of connection, that moment of really allowing it to tell us exactly what is held within us. And then, you know what? I don't have to worry about which tool my toolbox is going to use. That wound is going to reach in there, pull it out, and say, here, use this one. Go get your singing bowl. Let's go for a walk. You need to call a friend. Reach out to that beautiful professional that you have in your world and bring this to that space, and let that sacred container work with that. It's going to guide us into what's in there. And culturally, we have really separated ourselves from this because we have deemed that whatever it is that we're trying to heal is somehow broken. And when we see it as broken, we don't see it as having wisdom. We don't see it as having it's betrayed. It's somehow defective. It somehow doesn't have that within it. And so right off the bat, we're deeming these emotions, and you could see how that belief system that I was working with very early on is very easy for us to believe, because why wouldn't we deem it as lower level emotions? I don't want to feel anger. I don't want to feel sadness. I don't want to feel, like worry and frustration. I don't want to feel like that weird, like jealousy, envy thing or something like that. Like that feels incredibly disempowering. I don't want to feel any of those things. And yet, if we can turn towards it and say, what is it here for? Chances are there's a wounded part of us, and chances are we can help that wounded part realize that what it's stuck in, the point of view it's stuck in, is no longer truthful for us in our environment. We have more degrees of freedom, we have more options, we have more opportunities and more choice that's available to us. So there is a ton of shaming that happens. And one of the first things I have to do with clients when they come to me is help them shed all of this, because they really are beating themselves up way more than they need to about like, ugh, I had an angry thought the other day, and I'm like, well, anger is just a messenger for a hurt part of us, for a confused part of us. So let's back that up and let's slow it down and invite it. Where did it get confused? Where did it get disappointed? Where did a part of you feel embarrassed? Where did a part of you feel that somebody wasn't honoring you for who you truly be? Like, what is it the messenger for? And when we can learn to engage and work with it from that point of view, all of a sudden, these emotions aren't something that need to be controlled, aren't something that need to be bottled up, aren't something that we need to say, oh, I never have that, and wear that like a spiritual badge of honor. All of a sudden, of course, it's just a part of us. And so, like in the mental health world, this is like, oh, I felt sad today. Well, okay, sadness is a part of life. But it's almost become this really toxic, like I have to just feel happy all the time on that side. And then on the spiritual side, it's if we're attached to any emotion, somehow we're not doing it right. We got to let all that go and allow this to be there. The interesting thing is, just a quick side note, as I was researching this episode and kind of picking and going through my files of like which quotes I wanted to pick, and I kind of had an idea that this is the one I wanted to use, but I was like, well, let me just do a quick little search out there and see if there's a different one of hers that might be a better fit or something like that. And so I typed in inspirational quotes, and this weird quote that nobody could attribute kept showing up into it, and I tried to track it down. I couldn't find out who it is. And it said that when you can tell your story, and side note, I don't agree with this quote. When you can tell your story, and it doesn't make you cry, then you'll know you have been healed. And what I was typing in was inspirational healing quotes, right? Inspirational quotes for working with emotions. And this stinking quote kept coming back to me over and over and over. And I was like, wow, that is literally what I'm trying to help debunk, right? Because yes, we don't want to have to, when we can tell our story without getting lost and enmeshed and in the ride as if it's happening to me right then again at that time, and that is what's making me cry, then yeah, okay, I can come at it from that way, but that's not what this quote says. This says when you can tell your story and it doesn't make you cry, then you know you've been healed. And that is the exact opposite of healing, because that is not wholeness. Instead, it's when I can tell my story in a way that I'm not needing you to respond to me with shadow pity, with, oh my gosh, that's horrible, through that victim and tending to me with that story, that I've already tended to that story within myself. I've already worked with all those little parts. And now I'm able to share my story as a beautiful gift to somebody to help them see themselves in it without needing weird, shadowy things back. Then I know that I've healed. But do I still have moments where I cry? I feel the pain of that, yes, but it's not enmeshed. It's actually beautiful, open heart energy of like, wow, I feel the pain of not only quote unquote myself in that moment, but I can feel how other beings have experienced and walked through similar situations. I can hold it with empathy, with compassion, with sympathy, all in a clean way. And those are three different things, by the way. And that is what is equaled. So again, it's not about taking emotions off the bus and derailing them. Another one that came in when I was looking for this one was like, cry as hard as you want, as long as you want, but just make sure that when you stop crying, you never cry for the same reason again. I was like, like having a whole moment with my internet. There was a part of me that was very annoyed with the internet because it's like these teachings, and these are the teachings that, yes, they help us feel a sense of empowerment in the beginning, but ultimately that creates that one right there belongs to a protector. Go ahead and cry. Go ahead and cry as hard and as long as you want. But once you stop crying, we will never again let this happen to us. We will bolster this up. We will not allow this wound to come in. That's not healing. That's building a wall. Right? And so, and these quotes like these that I think Pema's quote and Pema's teachings are trying to really invite us into an alternative narrative, right? That's inviting us to being with what is, and saying that from that point of view, when we can turn towards it without being squeamish or trying to control it and tell it hands on hip, it shouldn't be here, when we can come and just say, what are you here for? What's happening? Tell me more. That is when we can start to truly heal. That's when parts of us no longer are going to be shunned in our system, exiled in our system, lost, struggling, upset, hurt, begging for us to find them. That room that just keeps filling up with messages because it just keeps sending the message until one day it doesn't even send the message. And it just says, I'm stuck. I'm a lump. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a division within the system, right? Until a part of us is willing to turn towards that piece and say, hey, I'm ready and willing to engage with you, with the tired parts, the bogged down parts, the scared parts. And I'm also willing to engage with the parts of me that feel strong, happy, willing, able to tend to that one, able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I can hold both in my system at the same time. The part of me that can see the light and the part of me that is totally cut off from it. So it's these paradox and conflicts that I think she's really talking about when she says, and take a good look. Because it's not a quick look, it's a good look. A good look to me is like not just a glance and a, okay, this is what we got to do, fixer, 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 keep moving. A good look says, I'm willing to see the messy versions of myself. I'm willing to see the parts of me that make sense. I'm willing to see the parts of me that don't make sense. I'm willing to like invite the ones that feel ashamed and that are hiding. I'm willing to sit with them, to not just force them to move, but come alongside them. I'm willing to give love to those parts of me that feel really burdened. I'm willing to also give love to the parts of me that are ready to take action, to leap, to forgive, to see that I'm not just one thing. And ask the system, how can we best help bridge this gap? How can we help bring these different warring systems within me into a way of working together and honoring? You know, there are so many stories that I can say of the shifts that people have made when I've been working with them, of watching them go from these huge inner battles to like all of a sudden an exhale comes into the system, and no longer do they feel pulled apart. No longer do they feel like they're having to brace. No longer do they feel like they got to keep running, running, running. And that's what not being squeamish is, right? And it's because they make the shift from trying to control their emotions to thinking they should be able to control them. I can't control if some little part of me, all of a sudden, something it sees or hears or thinks about triggers a part and it puts something in the tube and whoosh, sends it out and it drops in me. I'm tra-la-laing it. And all of a sudden, wham, there's something else here. I didn't choose for that. It just happened because my system, for whatever reason at that point, hit send on that messenger. Right? And so when I can stop blaming myself and shaming myself for why an emotion is there and just simply say it's there, it's what is, all of a sudden I can befriend it. I can look to make friends with that thing and not be squeamish and to take that good look and to really see communicating with the different parts of me that that is a messenger for. And that takes love. That takes courage. That takes compassion. That takes inner strength. And that takes a true devotion to be willing to consistently turn towards our system with that type of love, without the harsh judgments, without the desire to just fix it and make it get back in line and keep on going and going neutral at all costs, right? And so please note that what I don't have time to go into this episode with, I started to, and then I was like, woo, that's taking me into the weeds, is this other concept that I'm just going to kind of put it as a little side note here, and maybe we'll talk about it in another one. But I really go into depth to this when you work with me in either one-on-one spaces or in group spaces, like Evolving the Empath is a beautiful offering that I have. I usually offer it a couple times a year, should be offering it right around the first of the year. Unbridled Soul, again, opens once a year to have new cohorts come in, and Changing Health cohort opens a couple times a year, is that in those spaces, we really look at this idea too, that through our empathetic pathways, which we all have, the emotions that all of a sudden we feel don't always belong to us. And so one of the first things I teach people to do is how to sort and sift. They're tra-la-laing along, all of a sudden, boom, a tube drops in, here's an emotion. Instead of going off to the races with what is that in me, there's a step in there that says, is this mine? And that's the quick part that I'll just put in here. And then being able to say, if it comes back, no, this is not your emotion, it's just something that you have picked up either from the collective or from somebody you care about. They might be next to you, they might be 100 miles away from you. You know, it's just that we have picked up and built those pathways to be able to sense, see, feel, hear, and connect with that which another being is feeling in their system. And most of the time, the strongest, loudest ones, because they're designed to get our attention, are the emotions, right? And so one of the steps that is in here that you won't find in most others ways of how to work with emotions is just first asking that question of, is this mine? Is it like 10% mine, 20% mine? You know, you could do it by percentage. You could do it by like a pie wedge, like how much of this pie is mine, and other stuff like that. And then your willingness to return it to sender if it's not yours, because you're not responsible for that emotion. It's just there. We can get into why you felt that emotion and how, and that brings us into like trauma responses and adaptations and weird wonky things with your empathic pathways. That's beyond the scope of this practice because it's individual to each person. And so I like to be with them in that space while they're diving into that. But just know that that's a step that's in here, because not all emotions belong to you. Not everything that you feel or you think or even feel in your physical body is a representation of your system. And depending on how your system holds its quote unquote self compared to other people's system, it can get really wonky and muddy in there because you're actually picking up other people's stuff through those empathetic pathways. So just, you might want to put that one in there. And that's my little side note that I wanted to put in before we dropped into practices of this week. So we're going to assume that the emotions that you're working with this week are yours, and we're looking of how to befriend them. So the practices that I have for this week is really cultivating a willingness to accept this, what Pema is inviting us into, to turn towards our emotions as a messenger, as a messenger for the parts of us that need our attention and would like support. So the first thing I'd love for you to do is just take a few deep breaths in and out. And if you've been on the track of like maybe a mix of this, like, yeah, I want to master and control the emotions I don't like, but I want to like embrace the ones that I do like, whatever your system has been up to, whether it's just like emotions are a 4-letter word and I don't want to talk to them, or it's like, oh, I love my emotions, I want to get all up in them. Just take a moment and give yourself a few beautiful grounding breaths. And if it feels good to you, opening up that beautiful Reiki channel of light and love to come through your heart and out to your whole body being to help us be able to sense, to see, to hear, to connect with through that observer and a certain type of observation, one of compassion, one of love, one of curiosity, skills that I would deem part of what is called the sacred witness, right? So just take a moment and we're going to first do a data dump. I love this, like, just let's get a list of like all the ways you were taught by your tribe, by your family of origin, by your culture to work with emotions. We have them. We have a rule book of what we're supposed to do with emotions. And every person's rule book might have some similarities, but it's usually got some differences in it. And so we just want to take a moment. How were you taught, the good, the bad, the ugly, to work with emotions? Which ones were okay? Which ones were not okay? How were you supposed to work with them? Was there a time limit? We'll give you 5 minutes. You can have a good cry, and then that's it. We're not crying about that no more. you know, um, what's your stories around emotions? In the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving, but feel free again to pause and revisit this. Know that that Reiki energy stays with you until you invite it to release. And now that we've kind of looked at yourself from that tribal, global, this is what was told to me, how did you interpret that? Like, what would you say now would be your personal thoughts, ideas, fears, worries, concerns, confusions about emotions? How do parts of you, now we're getting the peanut gallery of you, right? How do parts of you feel about emotions? Now, remember at the very beginning, I said that we have protectors against positive emotions, just like we have protectors against negative emotions. A lot of us have protectors against how much joy we can feel, how much excitement we're allowed to show or be in without looking dorky or weird or somebody's going to make fun of us. So we have protectors on the other side of this equation. And if it feels good to you, I invite you to kind of do this from two perspectives. Like, here's the negative emotion pots, even though I don't call them negative, we can just deem them that for sake of like sorting, and then here's like the positive ones. And how does my system have rules governing each one of them? Because they're there. Okay. And when you're ready, we're going to move to doing our 4 being check-in. Now that we've done the data dump, now that we know what we're talking to, and we know that ultimately we're asking the system to change out that book. We're asking the system to change out to the book of befriending, of seeing them as messengers, and then seeing that emotions are designed to get me to shake hands with something else in my system, meaning they're not designed to stay there. They're not designed to stay active. They're not designed to do anything besides connect me. And as soon as I connect to that other part within me, now I'm in a dialogue. So if I agree to befriend emotions, I'm really agreeing to shake hands with other parts of my system. And that's what we're talking about. So from that perspective, let's dive in. So just take a moment and once again, soften your eyes. If it feels good, you can just let your eyes close. You can let them just kind of go soft, whatever feels good to you. And just feel into your body along this idea of I would like to befriend emotions. I would like to partner with them more, of allowing them to pass me off to the part of me that is in need of something, either wanting to celebrate more of it or move away from something, is nervous about something, fearful, has a wound that's bleeding out that needs tending to. It's inviting me to go to something. How does that feel in and around your body? With perceiving emotions as a messenger and therefore connecting to whatever it is it's asking us to connect to. Just make a note of the different sensations that are present. And remember, these sensations don't have to match. So part of me right there wanted to take a big, deep breath and then hold it, but it was like painful. So like the back part of my ribs were like, ooh, I can't move, you know? And so it's like that wind getting knocked out of you. So maybe a part of me, if I give it a little thought bubble, so you could do part two, if I give it a thought bubble, what is coming in that? I'm afraid they're going to catch me off guard, knock the wind out of me, and then I'm going to be stuck, not able to breathe or to move forward, not be able to attend to myself, not be able to ask for anything, because when the wind's knocked out of you, you can't talk, you can't do anything. And I feel like this is more of a collective reading that I'm doing right now and not of me personally, because I asked that, what sensation am I feeling right now? I'm holding the collective, maybe of some of the different ones that are in as people are listening to this. I'm also noticing that my feet are getting antsy. They're like moving up and down. I'm trying not to like let it move the camera setup that I have, like I want to move. So there's an antsiness. I don't really want to settle in. So this would be, if I give it a thought bubble, it's like, yeah, let's just get a glance and like skip and go. Like I'm just going to skip over this top of this water and then get out of Dodge. And the idea of settling in, of allowing it to like deeply shake hands with whatever the heck that messenger is for, feels a little uneasy, right? So now that I've got an idea of how that's feeling in the body, and I've got another idea of this thought bubble of what are its fears and its nervousness, I'm going to say thank you and ask it to step back a little bit. And now I'm opening to my heart. And what do you feel present coming from your heart? Asking it to like really invite in what sensations and emotions might be present for that messenger. What else is there? Because the first emotion just gets us in the door. And then once we connect with that part, there's usually another list. And so with the breath one, it feels like I'm going to get stuck. I'm not going to be able to like catch my breath. I'm not going to be able to breathe again. And I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm just going to be stuck in this state of like panic. So there's that. And if I check into the antsy one, the one that wants to like glance in and glance out, it's like, I don't have time for this. I got places to go and people to see and things to do. And I need my system to just like, let's go. And so it feels like if it does anything less than a glancing, it's going to suck it in and it's going to get stuck in there. It's going to get panicked and you won't be able to move into other parts of your life of things you need to do, of places you need to be, of things you want to get to. You're going to end up just stuck in this world of talking to these parts of you. I get that. I totally get that. And I also know that that's not true because our system doesn't want to stay stuck. It does want to heal. There is medicine in that wound that wants to be found and come forward. Our system is way more forgiving than you think it is. You could say to it, hey, I've only got 5 minutes right now. I'm going to come back and talk to you tomorrow when I have 10 minutes. Now, the kicker is you got to say what you mean and mean what you say. If you don't show up for it tomorrow, and give it that time, then what you will have said to your whole system in a broadcast message is actually, you can't trust me. You can't trust me to say what I mean and mean what I say. And so I have a whole thing where I go into like, trust is the first step of healing. Because when we say something to our system, it's willing to give us grace. It's not a taskmaster. It's not trying to demand our attention and hold the mic no matter what and tank the rest of our life. That's our fear. It actually is very willing to say, sure, I'm willing to be right here, kind of tucked in the side of your heart, quieter. I might pop my little head up and be like, are you sure you're coming back? And yeah, I'm coming back. I'm coming back tomorrow. It's up to us to make sure we show back up, right? So for some reason that really wanted to channel in. So we don't have to be held hostage by the parts of us that we're turning towards. I think that's the fear, that this part is going to hold us It's never going to let us go. We're going to get stuck listening to its laundry list of 1,000,001 things. And the rest of my life is now stuck in this wound and it can't go anywhere else. And we want to bring in another alternative that, yes, we want to be able to give it the time it deserves, but it can be in little chunks. It doesn't have to be all at once. And as long as we communicate that with our system and we show up when we say we're going to be there with that time, even if it's another little chunk, little by little by little, it releases, right? So when you're ready, just even open up to the soul being. What energies and graces and medicines of the soul do you feel coming forward that want to help you tend to whatever you found in this inquiry? Really feel like the gift of freedom of choice. Choice that's love, compassion, understanding, connection, maybe a little bit of forgiveness, clearing of the static that often gets in the way. And if it feels good to you, you can invite your hands through Reiki energy just to like wherever you feel that in and around your body. If you can't reach your back, you can get to it through the front side, or you can just imagine that beautiful energy hands are coming to your back and holding that. You can almost imagine that you're like painting it with your breath as you breathe in and out of that area. Whatever it needs to help you feel that support. And just know that this Reiki energy can be with you throughout the week as you are continuing this conversation of opening up to this possibility of either partnering more with the emotions as an ability to pass you off to the parts of you, or just even opening up to this concept. Okay, so let's join together right now in just setting this beautiful intention. I set my intention this week to be open to gaining insights into how to engage with the messengers of emotions in a healthier, more aligned way with who I truly be this week. I ask for Reiki light to help guide my attention to notice when I might be trying to block or disengage from any type of emotion. When I have a part of me that wants to, an emotion that's trying to get my attention, that I have somehow accidentally blown past, not heard, and it's trying to get my attention to partner with it, to hear the message that's in there. Also bring my attention to what types of emotion my system is feeling safe with, like helping me, excuse me, some part of somebody's allergic to that one. It's like, so starting to sort, like what is my system okay with? What emotions are on the like a little bit scary list? And it's okay to have that. That's the other huge thing that I think wanted to come through right there. It's like, it is okay for us to have a list of these are the ones I feel really good about. These are the ones I'm working on. These are the ones I'm still unsure about, because that's safety. Our system doesn't get to bully us into automatically saying yes to it. That's not true choice. That's not respect. That's not what it's asking for. That would be a part of me believing that. We need to let that go, right? Our system is very forgiving, very willing to work with us. We just have to ask it, please help hold this. And so as we work through that list, if we stay with the taboo ones and we never want to go talk to them, then chances are world is going to kind of set that up for us to like lovingly start to look at it. But in the beginning, it's willing to give us that freedom and that choice to move through it in a way that feels best to us, right? And the highest good and benefit of all. And it's not to tank the system and overwhelm you. It doesn't want to do that. So really this week, maybe sorting with what emotions are safe, which ones are kind of iffy, which ones you're like still like, nope. And it's okay to write that and claim that. It's not bringing the universal 2x4 to you. Additionally, if you want to start the sorting of what emotions are mine and what's not mine, maybe that's where you start. Just a simple like, I feel an emotion, mine or not mine. And I start to sort that and realize that, wow, 8 out of 10 emotions that I'm connecting with are not mine. I'm curious, what's happening with that in my body, right? And so in those moments of this awareness, either when you're trying to block or avoid, or when something's trying to get your attention, or just sorting how you work with the emotions, in those moments of awareness, we're asking for Reiki energy to help connect you to your heart and your soul beings, to help you engage and flow into a conversation, right? To take a good look, to willingly turn to that part of our system with love, with compassion, with curiosity as to what beliefs and habits are present, and really help you feel that you are dedicated to learning more about each particular emotion that you are experiencing in that moment. Getting curious of, does that emotion have a habit or a way of responding to it from that list that we did at the very beginning? And does that serve you or not, right? What are the other ways to be in action that would better serve you? So is there one on that personal list that we can put over there? Or is there one from a heart and our soul that we need to create, like a whole other option? Sometimes our system doesn't know another option because it only knows the book. So maybe this week it's creating what are potential other options when an emotion that you would normally control arises. And if you picked that option, what would that change? How would that change the way you feel about yourself, the way you view yourself, the way your body is expressing itself with that backlog of emotions? What would this change? So that's the practice for this week. Just inviting that Reiki energy once again to cleanse, clear, and release any and all energies, thoughts, patterns, behaviors, sensations of that backlog that don't need to be there anymore. We cannot go backwards. And so we are asking it to kind of take that stack down and start to allow you to work with current time choices as much as it feels safe to do so. And so it is. Peace, peace, peace. Okay, so I hope that this story of kind of my journey of working with emotions from trying to just master and control it and bring it all into only good vibes, man, really was cutting me off from actually having wholeness in my system. It was giving an illusion of being whole that wasn't actually rooted in what was happening in my and around my body. And as I began to partner with it, I realized that emotions, the scariness of them go away really quickly, and more willingness and more ability to quickly shake hands with something, turn towards that, take a good look, to be with that part of ourselves, and then ask it, what does it need? What would be helpful for it right now? What would bring me into more balance right now? And the system has that answers, and working with you. And so I hope that this exercise is both fun, illuminating for you, and then also deeply beneficial for you to help you really learn to befriend the system. And again, if you want to go listen to or watch Inside Out 1 or 2, they're super fun ways. They can start the conversation. You can bring it through those. Inside Out 2 starts to bring in this idea of beliefs, that what our experiences form beliefs within our system. And so there's something there to talk about as well, and start you loosely in that conversation too. So offering you light, love, and joy this week as you go across your day. Michelle Holling-Brooks. Thank you for listening to Soulful Practices. For more information on how to work directly with me or one of my guests, check out the show notes below. We'd love for you to also let us know what parts of this episode are speaking to you and how this practice is supporting you on your healing and spiritual journey. Please share this podcast with fellow seekers, travelers. Together, we can create a wave of soul-led beings in this world, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. Michelle Holling-Brooks. Until next time.